the challenge was, it sounds really simple, doesn't it? How do I find out about local events? I just, I live down the road, I want to know what's going on, from things like this, to things like what's going on at the castle, to anything, local events, volunteering to clear up the riverbank, anything. But how do I find out about that? And we spent quite a long time just talking about definitions. So, for instance, I think what several people recognised was our pretty post-it charts, definition of local events. There's some fascinating stuff on there. I think it shows when you get lots of people together, you get tons of different ideas about what local events mean to them. So that's a great sort of set of information there. We also talked about what's local, and that's where I have to confess it's kind of obviously highly political, because I live in Rochester, which is Medway, and then we went to the Kent Council site, and there was Medway stuff on there too. Then we went to visit Kent. Yeah, if you're an individual and want to know what's going on, you don't really want to have to think, I've got to go and look at lots of different places. So boundaries is a real thing to think about. Other angles we thought about, and again, this is just points in no particular order. So besides the issue of people wanting to broadcast their events, there's also the issue of event organisers wanting to publicise. So any service or dashboard or tool that is invented, please make it both, I want to find out about, but I want to publicise so that people can put their own stuff in. Lots of talk around, well, whose job is this? And the sort of talk that in an ideal world, yes, maybe it would come up from the ground roots, everybody would realise it's such a good idea that everybody would invent it. But as we all know, just sitting back and waiting for everybody to invent it probably means it never happened. So back to, well, why are we all here? Maybe there is a role here for a council to kind of, at the very least, facilitate it. And it might be that they invent a website, and I wish here I could give you some beautiful screenshots of them, this is the one we invented, but it might be actually, it's look at what everybody else is doing and maybe just kickstart some sort of overview search that searches everything, or facilitate something anyway. We had a whole load of very interesting discussion about control, moderation. Well, if you start letting everybody put their comments on, what if you get, I think somebody, a bit of education for me today, the local BNP office, I didn't know we had a local BNP office, but yeah, what if they suddenly start swamping it with their events? Would that be right for a council facilitated thing? So a whole slew of comments about, well, how do you set the boundaries and control? Yeah, just really a plea. Look at how many people are doing this already. And I noted down, just while we were sitting around the table and looking up, the number of people that have already answered this question. So you could say, if they've all answered it, why are we here talking about it? And so the obvious thing is, nobody's actually given us a way for a local person to just say, how do I find out what's going on? So, again, I've called it priorities. It's just things to think about, because things that came up during our discussion, absolutely keep it simple. You know, the obvious answer of Google being it's got one box. You know, don't try all the tools we looked at. You had to go like 10 key clicks to actually get to the information. And one guy, what was it called? I've forgotten. Meetup.com.
Yeah, meetup.com.
Just by browsing, found this site that actually you could get to where you wanted in 2 key clicks, and with a third you've shared it with all your friends. So there are answers out there that are much simpler than some of the sort of official ones we looked at. Definitely get this balance between searching and posting, and making outputs available to share. That was the idea, that a lot of information now, if for instance councils are putting themselves in a role where they're going to facilitate, make sure that you do a feed, or do it in really simple form, so that somebody else can say, well, I'm running a local site, I'll just take that and feed it into my website. Or I'm using, and no, it's not a joke, I don't have a smartphone, so I want something that I can either have sent to me in my email, or available to share in lots of different ways. Don't leap in and try and invent something new, as we've kind of said, there's a lot of them out there already. Lots of testing, and I did like the idea of all the people who've spoken before have said, you know, treat it as a pilot, have a go, get people using it, and then come back and say, what did you think? How would you like it to be different? Sustainability, very interesting little conversation about, at least try and start, when you start thinking, think about how you're going to give it a life, and champions, use of advertising, central seed funding, lots of good ideas. So yeah, it's nothing like as polished as that wonderful game, but lots of ideas about how to solve what looks like a really simple question.